As you guys know, I'm doing a depth year this year, which basically is the opposite of what the plastic witchcraft trend label is all about. And lots of other people are feeling similarly called. I feel like there is that urge in many of us, especially those of us who are connected with forces that we cannot see. We are being pulled that way, and I feel like that is because we have to now. We are the people who are here while we are facing this crisis, and it really is a crisis. It really is an emergency. There is, like some people say, it's already too late. We already cannot turn things around. I really hope that that is not true, because I would really love my children to be able to grow up and have children if they want to, and for them to grow up and be able to appreciate the world. But in order for that to happen, we need to make some major changes in how we live our lives. Convenience has become so important and so kind of ingrained that we don't even necessarily appreciate it anymore. And I'm really not calling anyone out when I'm talking about this. I'm talking about myself too. I live in this world where convenience is king, capitalism is king, and so we are on an endless consumer conveyor belt. We need to, we're fed to buy things, we're bred to buy things, because that is what makes the world go round. Except we aren't going to be here much longer as a race, as humans, unless we change. And change is really comfortable and easy. It is often fucking painful and difficult, and it is going to be. But if we start now, and if we support each other and kind of hold each other up and encourage each other as we make those changes, it will be less painful. Dream a little dream of me. Welcome, kindreds, it's Jessica TheStoryWitch. I wasn't going to make a response to this plastic witches tag that has been going around the YouTuber sphere. It's the sort of topic that, even though I haven't quite been 2 years on YouTube yet, and still this kind of topic of who is a real witch and who is a fake witch has already come around a couple of times. And I know that there are people, the last couple of times it came around, people were like, this has come around again and again and again. And so it's, it's something that does the rounds. And so I didn't feel like I really needed to make a video on it. I've watched a few of the other videos, like Thor Mooney's video. Keldon did a really cool video on this as well. I'll link both of those down below. And I traced back to the original video, which is by Freya Norling. And while I agree with a lot of what she said in that video, I feel like there were things I also felt, well, I suppose the cynic in me felt like it was a little bit deliberately provocative. If you haven't seen it, what is being said is that there are real witches and there are plastic witches, and the real witches are the ones who are doing the real stuff, and the plastic witches are the ones who are like getting their stuff from dollar stores, or they're buying plastic tools from China, or they are getting sage from Whole Foods. It's all these like kind of memes that are going around that basically are trying to kind of divide witches against each other. It's like, oh, I'm a real witch, you're not a real witch. And like, obviously it's bullshit. If you are in a church or whatever, then really there shouldn't be this judgment within any religion, isn't there? But if there are certain criteria that you're supposed to do, then you can judge, I guess, because how can you judge unless there's any criteria? So, like if you go to church every Sunday, then that gives you a mark for being a good Christian. If you pray every day, that gives you a mark for being a good Christian. For witches, there is no criteria like that. Because we all create our own path, there is no way of comparing one witch's path with another witch's path, because we create our own. Obviously, if you're within a certain tradition, and Keldon talked about this really well as well, so I'm going to link his video down below. If you're within a tradition and it's an initiation tradition and you're supposed to do certain things, then obviously you need to do those certain things because that's part of your tradition. And also with tools, if there are certain tools that your tradition says you have to use, then you get those tools. But for the most part, or I guess if you're kind of doing grimoire magic, then you're going to need like the knife of the art and stuff like that, but you're definitely not going to find that in a dollar store. So this whole conversation about like tools and dollar witchcraft and plastic witches and stuff like that is just not of interest to me, really. It's a form of stirring up the shit and basically gatekeeping, sort of saying you're a real witch, you're not. As I feel like I already said what I needed to say on the subject when I made my authentic witches video. I'll link that down below. So that's basically what it's all about, what this conversation is about. But then Anya Esma made a really good video where she focused, instead of focusing on that kind of who's a real witch, who's not a real witch aspect, she talked about plastic witchcraft. She picked out that term plastic and made that the focus of the video, and started talking about consumerism and things like that. And that is where I got interested, and that is why I'm making this video. So one of the issues that has been raised is about plastic in relation to value, I guess. You know, like you can buy cheap plastic tools, although, you know, which witches tools are made out of plastic? Like the plastic's got a lot of great qualities to it, especially for making things like toys and stuff like that, you know, where you need it to be malleable and to last a long time, be hard wearing. But as witches, most of our tools tend to be, you know, like wood or metal, so I don't really understand that, you know, this whole kind of you can buy your tools, plastic tools. I understand that the use of the word plastic has been used when I think people aren't necessarily talking about plastic, they're just talking about that kind of throwaway culture. We've got that whole thing about single-use plastic and how it's throwaway, it's part of our culture to just use things once and then discard them. And so that is a really good term to kind of criticize somebody with now, because plastic is already demonized in our society, and so attaching it to plastic witches similarly demonizes them and kind of it cheapens them, because plastic is seen as like cheap shit. And like Anya talked about this when she was talking about buying stuff from China. Plastic, when it was originally invented, was actually revolutionary. You know, there's so much technology we have today that we wouldn't have if it wasn't for plastic. But of course what has happened is that we have become so reliant upon it, and we've become so, we don't mind milking the earth. You know, it's not just plastic is the issue. The issue is far wider than that, and that is what I wanted to talk about in this video. I want to widen it out, and I want to kind of call people up, really, not call them out, but say, come on guys, you know, let's do this. We can do this. And I know that it might feel like, it does feel like, I feel like this a lot of the time. It's like, you know, I'm just one person and I can't do, the task is so mammoth. The amount of climate change, the amount of just rubbish that has been shoved into our oceans and shoved into landfill is phenomenal. And what can I do as one person? And it reminds me, you know, I try and think of that starfish story, you know, that starfish story where there's like a person walking down the beach and they come across a little child who's picking up starfish that have been stranded above the waterline, and the child is throwing them back into the water, and the grown-up coming along the beach is like, what are you doing? You know, look how many starfish are here, there's thousands of them, you're never going to make any difference. And the child picks up another starfish and throws it into the water and just turns to them and says, it made a difference to that one. And that is what I try and cling to when I do my little things to try and make a difference. And it's frustrating sometimes when you see other people who don't try, but I think the vast majority of it is, well, I think there's a few issues. I think there's a lot of people who feel powerless and feel like, well, it doesn't make any difference because what can I do? You know, there needs to be change further up the system. There needs to be like change enforced by government and stuff like that. And that is totally true. There does need to be change enforced by government, you know, and it looks like some measures are going to come in to ban single-use plastic, although I've already seen that there's some kind of wishy-washy language around that, so we will see. So yeah, I think that feeling of being overwhelmed is one that does crop up, and which is valid, but you know, with the starfish story, we can still try. And I think the other reason that people don't necessarily is just lack of education about it, like not knowing what to do. A few months ago, when I was looking into our recycling facilities that we have locally here in Wales, well, in my actual county, because it varies county to county, and obviously it's going to vary wherever you are in the world. I was looking into it because I wanted to try. We're aiming basically to produce as little waste as possible. We're definitely not zero waste, and I know that term zero waste has become, it was originally a term that was intended to talk about industry and not really be applied to individuals, because it's pretty much impossible to be completely zero waste. And so people are talking more about having like a low impact lifestyle and things like that. And so that is what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for that. You know, I have children, they like to have sometimes sweets in like plastic wrappers and stuff like that, and we're doing the best we can, but we have already reduced an awful lot. And when I was looking into the recycling options that we had here, I was doing the bulk of the recycling right, but there were certain things that I was putting in the recycling that actually shouldn't have gone in the recycling, or that I should have been separating out bottle tops from the rest of it and things like that. And so what I did was I made like a guide to our local recycling, and I posted it on my Facebook to share with other people in my local area, and I posted it on a couple of our local area groups. It's like, you know, that is like a little thing that took me like an hour maybe to do the research, to speak to the people in the council, then to make the poster and then share it. And yeah, some people are gonna be like, well, that's not a big deal, but little things like that really, really do add up. And I feel like the reason, I feel like we're talking about this in the pagan community, we're talking about plastic witches or plastic witchcraft, and like say no to plastic witchcraft, but really it's not just witchcraft, it's not just paganism that is affected by this. It's much wider than that, it's much larger than that, and we need to be looking at our whole lifestyles. But where I do feel it is really pertinent to witches is that we are, well, the way I see it, we are healers. We are the go-between between our communities and the earth, the spirits in the earth. And like obviously different people are going to believe different things about this, but I really feel like we are that connection point. And whereas in the past, you know, when harvests were bad and things like that, people would have turned to their witches to help. They can turn to us now to help, and we can do that, you know, with magic. We can do it with magic. We can do it certainly with like intention and things like that, but we can also do it by being role models, by setting an example, by making our own lifestyles as earth friendly as we possibly can. And you know, I'm not just talking about like where we get our candles for ritual from, or where we get our sage from. I'm talking about where we get everything from, where we get all our food from, where we get all of our clothes from, where we get anything that we bring into our home from. You know, this is much, much bigger than plastic witchcraft. At the moment, a lot of the best content I see on YouTube talking about living a low impact lifestyle is not within the pagan community. It is within, usually like in the plant-based food community, or, well, you know, there's a whole zero waste community on YouTube. And so if you are interested in that, or in minimalism, you can also look up that as well on YouTube. And there's lots of inspiration out there, but I feel like there should be inspiration coming from the witches too. I feel so passionately about it that we really do need to step up as a community to be role models. It's our job as witches, I believe, to do that, to kind of lead the way, to liaise with the spirits in the local area, to work out what we can best do to work our magic. I'm going to be making more videos about the practicalities, and if you want me to talk about that, then let me know, you know, because like I said, a lot of the time I think a lot of people don't do as much as they could do because it feels overwhelming and you don't know where to start, and like you're never good enough, and that's not a good feeling. That's how I feel, you know. It's like I'm not good enough, I'm doing this but I'm not doing this, I'm doing this, there's also these other 1,000 things I could be doing or not doing, you know. In the case of, I drive a car and things like that, you know. I'm certainly not saying that I'm perfect in any way at all, but I am trying, and that's all we can do. That is all that we can do, and we can try, and we can be the way showers of how to do this. And so as a community, I feel like that is our role, and that is what we need to do. I hope that made sense. Warmest blessings, and I will see you very soon.